going on here? Some music in the middle of the night. What? Gotcha! Now that we've found the culprit, let's talk about it. This is Murdoch's Music Minute, even though my actual name is not Murdoch. I like to talk about new and old records, most of the time older records. I review them, usually track by track. Sometimes I also rank discographies or do other fun music discussions. And today's album review contains the promotional powers of singles, making the best of a lineup that is falling apart, and a little bit of Spot the VIP on the album cover. In the recent documentary Man on the Run, Paul McCartney has talked in more detail about the entire period with Wings, and of course this album also is talked about a lot. So if you have seen this documentary, you are familiar with the story behind the recording of this album. Very good documentary, very informative, especially shedding light on a chapter in Paul McCartney's life after the Beatles. I enjoyed watching this. But if you like to, here's a very quick run through the years of McCartney up to this album in one of my obligatory little self-made ramshackle slideshows. Paul McCartney, yeah, so what's there to know about Sir Paul McCartney? He hardly needs an introduction for any music fan. So, yeah, born in 1942, grew up in Liverpool with his two brothers. Musical family, especially his father, James McCartney, who was a salesman for cotton merchants, but also a jazz musician. And young Paul obviously inherited that talent and interest. He taught himself several instruments and already as a teenager wrote his first tunes. McCartney's mother, a nurse and midwife, died of cancer surgery complications when Paul was only 14. Then he went on to be a member of this little band. He and George Harrison met at school, sharing a love for rock and roll and rhythm and blues music. In 1957, he met a certain John Lennon and his band, The Quarrymen. Paul soon joined that group, also bringing in George Harrison, his pal, as lead guitarist. And when Stuart Sutcliffe, a friend of Lennon, joined on bass and Pete Best was found as the new drummer, the band eventually chose the name The Beatles to embark on a club residency in Hamburg. Not too many important things happened then. Sutcliffe soon quit the band when they were still in Hamburg, which caused McCartney to switch from guitar to bass, of course then playing the famous Hefner model. The Beatles gained attention from music manager Brian Epstein when they appeared as the backing band for the English singer Tony Sheridan on his successful single My Bonnie, resulting in him becoming the band's manager in 1962. The Beatles returned from Hamburg to England and eventually could sign with the Parlophone label. Not the coolest label maybe back then, but this was to become the home of some masterpiece albums. Pete Best, before all that, was dismissed by Brian Epstein after first recording sessions and was replaced by Richard Starkey, of course better known under his stage name Ringo Starr. And in this now fixed lineup, the Beatles would go on to revolutionize pop and rock music throughout the 60s. First as a beat group with stellar hit singles, and from the mid-60s until their split in 1970 as an increasingly influential and innovative band, shaping the idea of guitar bands and rock music as we know it today, with unusual arrangements, an endless stylistic variety, psychedelic sound experiments, and an ever-maturing studio production on their records, always paired with an incredible sense for accessible, timeless melodies. You might have heard one or two of those. What was Paul McCartney's role in the Beatles, besides playing the bass? Of course, he and John Lennon formed the prolific songwriting partnership. Paul also was a great accomplished singer. He contributed a great number of the most popular and memorable tunes to the Beatles' discography. Among them, for example, Yesterday, Eleanor Rigby, Hey Jude, or Let It Be. Yet by the end of the 60s, after a run of the most iconic hit singles and albums in music history, the Beatles were slowly disintegrating. Volumes of books have been written about the causes and the reasons why the Beatles split up. To cut it short, I'd say personal factors, artistic differences, business and management issues, and other tensions ultimately led to the split of the Beatles in 1970. In March 1969, McCartney had married American photographer Linda Eastman, by the way, and the couple became parents the same year with their daughter Mary. In the same year, already in 1969, that is, John Lennon decided to leave the band but agreed with the others not to go public about it yet, as the band was in business disputes over their new manager Alan Klein, a choice that McCartney had opposed. It was McCartney who eventually went public by stating his departure from the Beatles and the end of the band in April 1970. The business side of the Beatles disbanding brought years of court negotiations and legal feuds among the band members and against their management and record company with it. Lawsuits that lingered over the ex-band members for years. And in this climate, and being seen as the culprit for breaking up the Beatles, McCartney and his young family withdrew to a farmhouse in Scotland. Before, Paul had already released his first proper solo record. I'm discounting soundtrack work he had done with George Martin in the 60s here, simply titled McCartney. The songs were basically home recorded with Paul playing all instruments and his wife Linda providing background vocals. Despite featuring some beautiful songs and becoming a US #1 album, critics at the time weren't too impressed with McCartney's lo-fi approach in songwriting. Fighting depressions and periods of heavier drinking, McCartney remained prolific in the wake of quitting the Beatles. Yet also his second album, credited to Paul and Linda McCartney, Ram, mostly written and recorded in the refuge of Scottish farm life, was broadly panned by critics on release in 1971. In September 1971, McCartney's second daughter, Stella, was born. Together with the session drummer Danny Sywell, who had already appeared on Ram, and former Moody Blues guitarist Danny Lane, McCartney formed a new band called Wings the same year, and this is where we are slowly getting to the album review. After the inclusion of second guitarist Henry McCullough, Wings began a first concert tour, mostly playing smaller venues and universities. The band's quickly recorded debut album Wildlife from 1971 fell through with critics and listeners. McCartney, however, held on to the idea of a new band. Wings' next album was supposed to become a double album in McCartney's mind, but that idea was denied by the record label and instead ended up a regular single record, 1973's Red Rose Speedway. It became a relative commercial success, but still was deemed artistically disappointing by most critics. The Wings were faltering, and McCartney's career seemed to have seen its best days by 1973. This came out in the late winter of 1973, but it was recorded under the African sun of Lagos. Paul McCartney was looking for a change. He didn't want to record in the same old Abbey Road studios or EMI studios in London. But at the same time, he didn't want this to become, a homespun, lo-fi home recording affair. So he asked EMI for a list of all the available studios worldwide, and somehow found this point on the map in Africa, Lagos, and decided that's where we're going to record the next Wings album. Back in the 70s, you couldn't do a thing like, for example, Duran Duran in the 80s. Hey, we've got a really great idea for a music video for our next single, but for that we need to go to the Bahamas or Thailand. So the next best thing you could do in the 70s was to get the list of all available studios. Maybe he also wanted to get away a little bit from all the court troubles and the litigations going on between him and the other Beatles and against their manager Alan Klein. So he literally was a bit of a man on the run in those years. Now, going to Lagos, of course, sounded all very exotic and romantic, but the country had just come out the other end of a civil war and was under a military government, so the conditions in Lagos weren't really the best. There was a lot of poverty and corruption and disease, and also, of course, street criminality going on. Also, the studio in Lagos really wasn't up to the same standard that McCartney was used to from his Beatles days in London. One could argue or discuss that maybe that whole, hey, let's fly to Nigeria just to record the album in an exotic place enterprise from McCartney was fueled a little bit by naivety. And he was also severely criticized for this move, especially by, for example, the African musician who also was kind of a political symbolic figure in those days, Fela Kuti, who accused McCartney of sort of new musical colonialism, or coming to Africa to exploit the musical traditions there. Something that also Paul Simon had to face when he recorded Graceland a decade later. But then the criticism rather came from musicians in Europe. And yeah, maybe there's a point to it, even though I think, as opposed to Graceland, Band on the Run isn't really very much influenced by African styles or African music. So these weren't the best, starting signs for the third album by Wings, on which, quite a bit of pressure was put due to the a bit underwhelming sales figures of the first two Wings records. Also mixed criticism. Wings were slowly gaining an enthusiastic live audience in the UK, but their albums still had performed, a bit under the expectations of the record company, and I guess also not as successfully as Macca himself would have wished. So he really wanted to return to his glory days and land a bit of a hit record with this next release. But before the band even got there, half of the lineup jumped ship. Guitarist Henry McCullough already for a longer time hadn't really felt at home in Wings, or more and more realized that still Wings would always be kind of Paul McCartney and some other musicians, and frictions had been building up between him and McCartney. And yeah, shortly before recording was to start for Band on the Run, he decided to leave the band, also after a dispute with McCartney, apparently after a rehearsal. And just one day before flying to Lagos, or at the very evening before flying there, also the drummer, Danny Sewell or Sewell, decided that actually he was happier without Wings, and declared that he was leaving the band. So that Wings, or what was left of them, maybe rather one wing instead of two wings, made their way to Lagos. Actually, just the trio of Paul McCartney, his wife Linda McCartney, and bass player Danny Lane. So arguably, uh, this Wings album is more kind of a Paul and Linda McCartney album, but McCartney just, held tight to the idea of having a band again, and this band identity, which still was very important to him, which is understandable. Nonetheless, most of the instruments on this album are played by Paul McCartney. I got my copy from a little secondhand shop, and I think this was in Edinburgh. The album came with this beautiful poster full of Polaroid snapshots from the recording sessions. That's pretty cool to have. Can't show them all in detail here. Otherwise, this would be probably a 2-hour video, another 2-hour video on Murdoch's Music Minute. The inner jacket or inner sleeve looks like this. Another nice little holiday shoot with the band and some kids from Lagos, I guess. And on the other side, you get all the song lyrics. Only 9 tracks on this album. It's not very long. And the record itself looks like this, with the band on the label, of course released on EMI Records. Same on the other side. This is a UK pressing, and I think I've learned a little bit. So according to the Run Out Groove Matrix, this is not a first press. It seems to be a bit of a later reissue, but still from the 70s, or at least from the days before we had barcodes on any products, including records. My album apparently belonged at one point to, maybe you can see it, it's on the label with pencil, to Gail. So thank you very much, Gail. I bought your record, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. And before I'll talk, of course, more about the music, which is always, at least for me, the most interesting bit, let's take a look at the famous cover photograph. Not exactly the same idea, but a little bit in line with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles, insofar that here again we have the band and celebrities posing together, but this time around the real life celebrities. Before doing my research for this video, I knew 3 of the VIPs on this record, and of course they were all posing like, a band of robbers running away, or of convicts trying to make a prison break. So we get Michael Parkinson here, who I was familiar with before, and he was, I think he passed away recently. Hope I'm not spreading any fake news here. Famous talk show host, at least in the UK. Of course, Paul McCartney, Linda McCartney, and Danny Lane in the front. Actor James Coburn, that's pretty cool, with a mustache, 1970s mustache, known for mostly action movies, playing tough guys, but he's also done some really goofy stuff in the 60s. Our Man Flint, for example, if you like very goofy, 60s spy parodies, take a look at that. Of course, it's of its age and periods. So you have to put up with a bit of sexism, I guess. But really, really fun, goofy movies. And my absolute favorite on here, Mr. Christopher Lee. Of course, to this day, probably best known for his depiction of Dracula, but he has done so many more things. Younger generations know him as Saruman from the Lord of the Rings movies. And he is the actor starring in the most movies of all time. Maybe he isn't, but he has done really hundreds of movies, ranging from hilarious B movies to really high profile productions. I love Christopher Lee. An interesting gentleman and character. And three more persons I didn't know before. Mr. Kenny Lynch, who was a British singer, actor, and entertainer. So probably a face known to UK audiences. Now, this is a curiosity. Clement Raphael Freud, later Sir Clement Raphael Freud, indeed a grandson of Sigmund Freud, which makes me very happy and curious as a psychologist. He was at that point a kind of television presenter, television personality. He also was a learned chef, and later in the 80s would become a Liberal member of Parliament. And last but not least, John Conteh, a UK boxer, 1 year before he would win the World Boxing Council light heavyweight title. I'm not an expert on boxing, but this guy apparently was one of the very successful boxers from the UK. Yeah, quite a random bunch on this cover, which makes it even more fun, actually. Knowing some celebrities always comes in handy, especially if you need some more unusual idea for your album cover. Note, nowhere on the front cover will you find the band name. It just says Band on the Run. On the back, somewhere here on this what resembles a file, a police file or a file by a private detective, it says Paul McCartney and Wings. We get the band one more time in black and white photographs, and yeah, this seems to resemble, the desk of a private detective's office or of a police office with, the files on these three fugitives. And also on the record, often in the lyrics, there's a sense of freedom and of escape, especially, of course, in the famous title track, which also opens this album. So let's finally, after all my talking about run out grooves, matrices and pressings and stuff. Finally, let's talk about the music by Paul McCartney and Wings. Band on the Run, the title track, has become a pop rock classic. It's still played on the radio, in pubs, in TV shows, wherever. And interestingly, this is actually not a very concise, straightforward pop track. Arguably, this is kind of a medley or a suite, maybe also harkening back to the ideas that the Beatles pursued on Abbey Road by, stringing together several song ideas, or actually this even goes farther back to songs like A Day in the Life, but with Band on the Run maybe done even to more excess. It's a 3-part or even 4-part song that opens quite gently with Paul McCartney's electric guitar and a dreamy, very 70s sounding synthesizer sound. Starts off like a, lush 70s rock ballad. McCartney dishes out one of his irresistible tunes. At this point, he still was the master of crafting pop melodies and bringing in so many hooks into one track. It's just incredible. So this is an instantly memorable tune. He's singing about being stuck inside 4 walls, which could stand for the situation in the suboptimal studio in Lagos, but maybe also on a wider scale for the situation McCartney found himself in as a musician, as an artist, or as a human being, basically in the early 70s, still being under pressure of reviving his career, being under pressure of, wanting to be a pop star, but at the same time being caught up in all those legal feuds I mentioned before. And after a short segment with gorgeous harmony vocals, the song gains a bit of oomph. The electric guitar gets a bit more biting. The drums come in with a bit more force, and the whole song gets a bit rockier for the darker section where it says, "If I ever get out of here, thought of giving it all away." This "if we ever get out of here" line, according to McCartney, refers back to something George Harrison said during one of the endless business meetings in the days of the Beatles. And yeah, it sounds like something George Harrison would say. Later on, Mecca also said that parts of this track were inspired by the drug busts he was an object of. There are more cool 70s synthesizer sounds going on, giving this track almost a bit of a proggy feel. Of course, we won't get full-blown progressive rock from Paul McCartney, but the structure of the song and some of the, especially the synthesizer sounds, really seem to have been nicked from the then quite big progressive rock bands from the UK. And then as a 3rd part, or maybe a little bridge, a little link segment, suddenly a really bombastic orchestral arrangement breaks in. Sonically, maybe also a little bit still of the aftermath of the Wings single and famous James Bond theme song Live and Let Die, which had been released a couple of months earlier to this. However, the orchestral arrangement here is not by George Martin, it's by Tony Visconti. And yeah, on this album, McCartney, among other things, also had been influenced apparently by a bit of glam rock, especially the orchestral arrangements or the string arrangements he heard on the successful popular T-Rex records. Tony Visconti famously was the arranger for T-Rex, at least on those hit albums from the early 70s. And this may be a bit awkward, unexpected little orchestral link paves the way for what I would call the main body of the song. Actually, the largest portion of the track, the actual Band on the Run song, which then runs for a couple of minutes and is a proper pop song. One could play this without the first three parts before that, and it would still make sense as a more straightforward pop song. And that alone is a great tune with the Band on the Run chorus and the verses also having a great melody. And from this point onward, the lyrics seem to be more about, you know, a band of criminals or accomplices being on the run. Of course, you can also interpret that as, yeah, literally being about a band on the run. So the musicians who are accomplices and who stick together through thick and thin. Yeah, this is a masterpiece of McCartney songwriting, in my opinion. Maybe there are McCartney fans who are not too hot on this one. And probably also a lot of McCartney fans who simply have grown tired of hearing the title track because, yes, this has been played to death on the radio, in playlists, etc. But I think this is a timeless, if very 70s sounding pop rock classic, as mentioned before. So let's take a little listen again to Band on the Run. Famously, crime was also involved in the recording of this album, so maybe also that flew a little bit into the lyricism, because Paul and Linda McCartney were mugged only shortly after arriving in Lagos by a couple of street bandits who robbed demos and first recordings, actually first master tapes for this album. So a couple of tracks needed to be recorded again, also overshadowing the whole Lagos recording experience. However, the momentum built up by this fantastic start into the album is kept up and arguably even heightened by the next track, Jet, which is one of the most, you know, relentlessly rocking songs on the album, very much influenced by glam rock, by 70s glam rock. Nonsensical lyrics. McCartney himself has admitted that he can't tell what the song's actually about, and some of the words that he used simply sounded fun and cool, like, for instance, the term suffragette, which really is an unusual word in a pop song. But yeah, this is another catchy beast. I probably like this one even more than the title track. Heavy guitars in the background, more charming 70s sounding keyboards, and a really rocking and rolling tune. And it's one where, especially live, you know, the audience can yell along. Jet, it's really a whole lot of fun, and a little bridge that goes into a bit of a reggae-tinged passage. Really cool songwriting, in my opinion. I can almost remember the funny faces. That time you told them that you were gonna be marrying soon. And this marked another occasion for McCartney to name a song after one of his dogs. So apparently he had a young Labrador puppy, a bit of a wilder dog, called Jet. The song, by the way, was the last one to be recorded for the album, and actually was recorded after Wings had returned from Africa to London. So this was recorded at the EMI studios in London, but it was the first single for this album. Released, however, after the album's release, which is an unusual practice, of course. The reason for that was that Paul McCartney originally really was reluctant to release singles to promote this album. On the one hand, maybe because he still felt that singles, like in the days, or at least in the early days of the Beatles, should be standalone songs and not be tracks from the album. Maybe because he also thought that the album should stand on its own, on its own strength. However, only after first singles were issued from this album, the album itself started to take off in terms of sales. So for once, the record company decided the right thing, and the singles really helped promoting Band on the Run, making it a true success with a bit of a delay, but more about that maybe after I talked about the other tracks. I already realized that this is becoming one of my longer album reviews. Track 3 offers a bit of a change of pace. It's a lot more relaxed, a bit more acoustic. The lovely little Bluebird, a song that dates back to the early 70s and allegedly had been written, or mostly written, by Paul and Linda during a vacation in Jamaica. It comes with a bit of a vague calypso feel, as mentioned, very much acoustic guitars, beautiful, lush harmony vocals, and yeah, it's just a little romantic, acoustic 70s pop song. Certainly not the most quintessential track by Paul McCartney, but I really like this one, especially, as mentioned, it offers great pacing to the track list here. A romantic song to spend some time with your loved one on a beach under palm trees. And again, still this more maybe lightweight material by Paul McCartney still has such a great melody and hooks to offer that this track also for me is a keeper.
And you know what love can do. I'm a bluebird, I'm a bluebird, I'm a bluebird, I'm a bluebird. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a bluebird, I'm a bluebird, I'm a bluebird. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Bluebird.
A track like Bluebird with a bit of a different arrangement could have been something that Paul McCartney might have contributed to the White Album, for example. Then we get to the slightly zany and lyrically a bit odd Mrs. Vanderbilt, which, at least in some countries in Europe, also was released as a single. This track lives or dies due to the repeated "Hey Ho" chorus, which makes it sound a little bit like a crazy 70s pirate shanty. And I know, or have read in forums discussions of this album, that this is an element that annoys some listeners. I think it's quite fun. It makes the track what it is, worms its way into your memory. The lyrics on this track leave me personally quite puzzled. I honestly can't say what this is about. It's just one of those jaunty, catchy Paul McCartney pop rock tracks. I especially like the bass playing um, in this song. And even though there is a bit of a darker or maybe melancholic element in some parts of the song, the lyrics, such as, for example, when your bus has left the stop, you'd better drop your hurrying. What's the use of hurrying? Seems to be a bit, seems to be about, taking life easy, taking a step back, getting into a relaxed mood, maybe also influenced by the experiences in Nigeria. What's the use of worrying and hurrying? Maybe also a little bit of a fatalistic stance, but definitely a fun song. Ho, hey ho. And then side one ends with, personally, another highlight for me on this album, the great Let Me Roll It, a song that is built around a very memorable and cool guitar lick. Again, some critics say that this wears thin rather quickly in the song, and that this lick alone isn't enough to, give substance to this track. But I personally think it's perfect. It has a bit of a bluesy feel, and then also a bit of a 1950s pop ballad. It almost sounds like something left off Abbey Road, maybe a bit of a blend between McCartney's own "Oh Darling" and Lennon's darker "I Want You, She's So Heavy." But it's also due to the echo effect McCartney uses here on his own vocals, which often has been identified as sounding very similar to the vocal effect that John Lennon liked to use in the later Beatle years and also on his solo records. McCartney sometimes has stated that this was unintentional, so he didn't deliberately try to make this sound like a John Lennon vocal track. But yeah, this effect adds, I think, to the whole atmosphere and to the strength of the song. Critics and fans, as they often do with Beatles and post-Beatles tracks, also read a kind of attempt of reconciliation into the lyrics of the song. It is well known that especially John Lennon and Paul McCartney on their early solo records used to more or less openly send messages to each other, and very often not very friendly messages. So, well, to say it bluntly, they slagged each other off in sometimes quite childish song lyrics. But sometimes this also has been over-interpreted by eager fans, and yeah, this track has sometimes been interpreted as an attempt to make peace and to declare actually friendship or love between friends. On McCartney's side, could be, but not necessarily. It can also be simply a quite rocking love song. And to me, this is the track with the biggest coolness factor on Band on the Run. yeah, maybe my heart is like a wheel, let me roll it to you, is not the greatest analogy, but who cares when the actual song is so good. We're getting now, or we moving over to side two of Band on the Run, which starts with the rather unassuming track Mamounia. Um, the title refers to, apparently, this is just internet information that I researched, to a hotel in Marrakesh where McCartney stayed, I think also in the early 70s. It's another more acoustic track with gentle, laid back percussion. Actually, the percussion is what I like most about this. Um, it's a bit fluffy, very breezy track, maybe a bit lightweight, throwawayish, and repetitive, but on the other hand, it is quite short at 2.5 minutes. And I like the gentle, naive charm of this track. Again, very melodic, so it sticks to your mind. And yeah, it's just one of those little ditties that you can expect on a McCartney album. There's a bit of lush saxophone coming in and one of those quirky yet charming, nostalgic 1970s synthesizer sounds. It's another, I'm sitting on the beach, I'm very mellow and laid back and maybe having a smoke tracks. And this is the one track where maybe you get a little bit of a vague African influence, maybe due to the harmony vocals and that percussion. Mamounia is another song which is about escaping and seeking freedom, a theme that runs a little bit through this album. Next up is the one track with Danny Lane as a co-writer. It's called No Words, and this is another quite lush 1970s soft rock ballad with a pretty beautiful and strong melody and string arrangements, I guess, by Tony Visconti, that really show that Wings during that period and the Electric Light Orchestra were pretty close to each other in sound sometimes. This is something I imagine could have been easily played on the radio in the 70s. It's a decent track, not the strongest one on Band on the Run, but certainly one I wouldn't skip. No Words ends with a bit of a guitar solo, which really sounds promising, but unfortunately then the track fades out rather quickly, and whenever I hear this, I wish they would have made this track a little longer, but instead we get over 5 minutes of Picasso's last words, Drink to Me. On the US version of this album, however, also the song Helen Wheels was included, a song that dates back to the Red Rose Speedway album or those sessions, or at least a song that had been recorded between those two albums. It's a fun rocker by Wings, if maybe also a bit throwawayish. I can understand why maybe the US label liked to have a bit more energy at this point in the album, though Helen Wheels is not really in step with the rest of the tracks or with the vibe of the other tracks on Band on the Run. However, the UK version or the European version as well doesn't feature that track, so I don't have to say too much about that one. So next up is Picasso's Last Words. This is a song that has an interesting background story to it, how it was recorded, namely in the studio of Ginger Baker, who at that time lived in Nigeria. He had probably retreated to Africa because half of the music world in the UK wanted to properly kick his face. At least that's what I could imagine. Yeah, I have very, very mixed feelings about Ginger Baker. However, it was quite nice of him to offer his studio to Paul McCartney, since he heard that Wings really had troubles in the EMI studios at Lagos, including failing electricity and other technical difficulties. However, McCartney, maybe also he had mixed feelings about Ginger Baker and his temperament, was reluctant to record the entire album with Ginger Baker. But this song was recorded together with Baker in his studio, and but all we get from Ginger Baker here is not his famous drumming. Ginger Baker, of course, of Cream fame, but he only plays, allegedly, a tin can filled with gravels. And also the background story to this song is one of those typical McCartney stories, how he writes songs. Allegedly, Pablo Picasso's last words is based on a bet he had with the actor Dustin Hoffman, who had asked him if McCartney was able to, write songs on the spot about anything. And to demonstrate that, McCartney had just read a newspaper article or an article in a magazine about Pablo Picasso and the death of Pablo Picasso. And so he came up with this song pretty much on the spot. But maybe that's also the problem of the song, because it really is very, very inconsequential and gives you the feeling of, yeah, this is a song about whatever, with a bit of a whatever attitude. This is where the album becomes a little bit too relaxed and loose for its own good, maybe. There's not much happening in the song. It's very repetitive. It goes through different sections. Later on gets a bit of a bossa nova style involved, but basically just in the second half repeats the lines "drink to my health." In between, we all of a sudden get disconnected reprises of Jet and Mrs. Vanderbilt, and yeah, there's not much to this song, to be honest. Quality control wasn't always, very high up on McCartney's list or priorities. And if the album is playing in the background, I don't mind this song. It's not terrible. It's just very uninteresting, especially if you listen attentively to Band on the Run, or if you just focus on really listening to the music. This is the song where I would say the album really is in danger of losing steam and facing a serious dip in quality. It would have been a nice little filler track if they had shortened it to maybe leave space for a longer guitar solo in no words, or even better, add a new real killer track to the tracklist of Band on the Run. But this is what we got, so 5.5 minutes of this is really a bit self-indulgent. But fortunately, the album ends on a real high note with what maybe could be considered a Paul McCartney classic, 1985. Macca's changes over to the piano for this one, playing a really cool, groovy piano motif or piano lick throughout the song. And this one is upbeat, but also has a bit of a dystopian, darker note. Again, and I think Paul McCartney would agree, the lyrics are not the most important thing. Sometimes it's just words or lines he came up with that he thought sounded good and that transport a vague meaning but don't have a really proper meaning. Again, it's about artistic freedom or freedom in love, maybe, but with a bit of a dystopian note, as mentioned. Also, the music is a little bit darker, but up tempo, and yeah, this track pulls out all the stops. Actually, another great vocal performance from McCartney. I've already mentioned the cool piano, guitar solo, a really bombastic ending to it. This track is worth all of its 5.5 minutes for a change, and ends with maybe again a bit of a confusing little snippet of the Band on the Run chorus that then fades out and finishes off the album. Those little elements, of course, are completely unnecessary because they seem to pretend that this is kind of a concept album and that the songs are somehow connected to each other, which, at least in my opinion, they are absolutely not. But at the same time, this very nicely ties up the whole album. And yeah, 1985 is a song that you really should listen to if you've never heard it. It's another highlight from Band on the Run.
Oh, no one ever left mine in 1985 will ever do. She may be right, she may be fine, she may get love, but she won't get mine, 'cause I got you. Oh,
So, after favorable reviews but rather disappointing sales, this album slowly and especially boosted by the singles such as Jet or the title track, climbed into the top 10 of several countries around the world, making it to number 1, for example, in Australia, in Spain, in Canada, in Norway, the UK, and the USA, becoming, after years of mixed success and even sometimes rather harsh criticism from fans and music critics, one of McCartney's biggest successes, or his biggest success since the Beatles. This one, up to this day, is regarded one of his best releases, post-Beatles releases, and certainly the best album by Wings. Yeah, the Wings discography is a little bit hit and miss. I mean, there are great tracks to be found on each album by Wings, but I would agree that this one here plays best from start to finish. McCartney sometimes has a tendency to become a little bit too lightweight or too much sugar, maybe, but I really like this album and enjoy listening to it frequently. I think this one really turned out another of my, let's do a quick review, and then all of a sudden I talk 50 minutes about just one album. How lame is that? So if you really made it to the end, I guess you are specifically interested in McCartney, you're already a fan of Wings or of his solo output, and you know this album. If you just watched the first 10 seconds and then maybe skipped to the end of this video to find out what I maybe say as a kind of summary, then all I can say is this is should be regarded a 70s classic. If you like 70s pop and rock music, you should listen to this. You should get this for your collection, even if you're maybe not an out and out Beatles completist or Beatles fan. This, I think, is really a 1970s standard. Yeah. I think I'll go back to bed now. Hope you enjoyed this. You know what you can do to show your appreciation on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel if you have to. Give me a thumbs up or even hype this video and whatever YouTube invents to sort of add some pseudo interaction between content creators and viewers. And if you don't do any of these things, that's also perfectly all right. Maybe you would like to join in again for the next Murdoch Music Minute. Thanks and bye-bye.